My special guest is Marty Stuart, he of the Hillbilly Rock. Marty, with that song, did you create a new dance in America?
Well, I see a lot of people in honky tonks and concerts shaking their leg, and I don't know if they're itching or if they're dancing, but it seemed to do something out there.
That was a slow breaking record, wasn't it?
Well, we've talked about this before. I came to Nashville now about 3 times in a row, and I knew the song could start a campaign. I just really had that conviction. And I did that song till I was almost ashamed to come back to your show and do it. But I think the Nashville Now shots and the video really helped break that record, yeah.
How long did it take to break that record?
Oh, at least 4 months. 4 months. We just kept hammering at it.
And finally, the song got in the charts and stayed for how long?
Almost. I actually lost it. Like 48 weeks or something
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
almost a year.
Yeah. And the album is still selling real strong.
What is the album titled Hillbilly Rock?
It's called Hillbilly Rock.
What else is in the album?
Well, there was a song, the first release was an old Johnny Cash song called Cry, Cry, Cry. And I always liked that song. And it didn't do very much. Then Hillbilly Rock came out, and there was a song called Western Girls that followed up that did real good.
But the Hillbilly Rock, you have really pounded that into people's heads, haven't you?
You know, and it caught on with serious dancers out in honky-tonk land. And little children love that song. I mean, little kids, I don't know why, but they really identify with that. Their little folks come up everywhere.
So now when you do it on stage, do you immediately get recognition for that song?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's turned into a bit of a signature song. Didn't mean it to do that, but I guess if you hammer at something so long, you'll get it.
Do you close with it, or do you do it when
At this point, we close with it, yeah. And it's nice because last night we played Baton Rouge, and in the Coliseum when we did that, I mean, everybody rushed the stage and people started dancing. They were throwing people off the stage. It kind of creates that everywhere we go.
Who was throwing who off the stage?
We had some serious dancers that wanted to get up on stage and help us out a little bit. So security people were helping people down, if we'll put it that way.
Well, that's much nicer. Do people get carried away?
Yeah. I don't know what it is about that song. I never thought the song would create anything to do with a frenzy, you know. And we play the song and people just want to get up and dance. They seem to do that.
Do you play Texas a lot?
Mm-hmm.
I know they love to dance in Texas.
They do dance in Texas a lot. And they dance to that song. We play hardcore honky-tonk songs a lot, but there's something about that song that seems to stir them too.
In your estimation, what is a hardcore honky-tonk song?
You'll remember this, and I think a lot of old country fans out there remember. A song like The Palm of Your Hand. Remember the old Buck Owens song? To me, that's a hardcore honky-tonk. Swingin' Doors comes to mind as a hardcore honky-tonk song. Wind Me Up. Those kind of songs. I could sing those songs all night long. They make me happy. You know, there's something about standing on stage with Ralph and singing, "This old smoke-filled bar is something I'm not used to." And you look and you see a Michelob and a Bud and a Miller sign, and you see people in cowboy hats dancing their girls around the floor. That comes to life, that line.
I'm
really
trying to
does.
think of a song. Dim lights, thick smoke, and loud, loud music.
Joe Maphis wrote it.
Marty, let's talk about current releases. What are you doing right now?
The album that we have on the charts these days is called Tempted, and the first single off that was a song we had called Little Things, and it did real well. I think it went to #2, and the new song's been out about 2 weeks. It's called Till I Found You, and it's a bit different. It's a change of pace for us. It's kind of slowed down a little bit, and I really love this song. I think it's probably the best song we've had so far.
What was Little Things about?
It kind of kept in line with that dance thing. We made a couple of dance records for honky tonks. You know, I've noticed that most of the places we played, they have live music, and as soon as the band leaves the stage, like in the Texas clubs, they have sound systems that come on, and there's dance music.
Mm-hmm.
And Little Things was, I don't think it will win a Pulitzer Prize for the lyrics, but it had a nice feeling about it.
All right, what was the follow-up to Hillbilly Rock?
Western Girls.
What was that about?
Paul Kennedy and I were sitting around one day writing songs, brainstorming. I made the comment, you know, everywhere you go on this earth, there's a cowgirl she's either a real cowgirl or a cowgirl at heart. And we looked at each other and said, Western girls. And for real, when I went to Czechoslovakia with Johnny Cash, I was in his band, I couldn't get over all the people dressed up like cowboys and cowgirls over there. Same in England, as you know, at the Wembley Festival. Everybody looks like Dale Evans over there. And everywhere in America you go, if you're in the middle of New York City and play at a venue, there's going to be somebody coming that looks like a cowgirl. So we wrote a song for all the cowgirls in the world.
When you're in Europe and you're working to people you know have never been to America,
Mm-hmm.
and they're dressed Western, don't you find that kind of odd?
Well, I dress pretty cowboy at all times, so they look pretty normal to me.
Well, I assume they are influenced by American movies and television.
I would think so. I get the feeling, and Australia is a good example. Australia reminds me of America a long time ago. It's a bit innocent. John Wayne is still real popular in Australia, and cowboy movies are singing stars. I think Tex Ritter would be real big right there right now, and they like the way that those people dress. That's how they identify with us over here. They think we're all cowboys.
Have you ever had someone ask you, why don't they dress Western in Nashville?
Yeah, I got on a campaign a few years ago to save all the nudie suits in town. And I went down the row in the union book and called every picker and every singer that used to wear those things. I knew they didn't care for them anymore. And it kind of started out because I saw videos figuring into the thing. And I used to remember when I was a kid and Ernest Tubb would come to our hometown. They'd get off the bus and those cowboy suits and off the bus that looked like a rolling billboard. I love Johnny Cash. All those guys, Flatt and Scruggs, they all had identifiable images as well as identifiable sounds. And I really saw nudie suits as a work of art. And a lot of people didn't do it anymore, so I just thought it ought to be back in the mix. And it started, I see a lot more people doing it these days, but when you're in Europe, they still think we ought to dress that way.
Marty, a lot of people that come to Nashville, I meet them because they come to our television audience. And I think Nashville is quite unlike what they had imagined.
Mm-hmm.
Nashville is a normal city. We have McDonald's and we have all the franchises, but people here do not dress Western. Talking about the people that live here.
Right.
And they don't dress like people do in Texas.
Right.
But I think a lot of people expect us to.
I see. Yeah. And the thing about Nashville is there's an element, a corner, even the music industry doesn't dress much that way anymore. There's a little corner of it that does, that pays respect to that. But there's an awful lot of doctors and lawyers in Nashville, and a lot of, like you said, normal folks. And probably wouldn't wear a cowboy hat. You couldn't stick it on them.
You happen to have picked on one element that might. I know a lot of doctors that have a guitar and they want to pick and sing.
Really? Haven't met them yet.
It seems to me a lot of people that come here expect guitars hanging from all the lampposts and maybe a little disappointed in the fact that it's kind of just a normal city.
And the only thing that kind of aggravates me out there a little bit, if you go to New York City or if you go to Los Angeles to do a TV show, for some reason they still have this old thing left over in their minds that we still sit on hay bales.
Hay bales and wagon wheels.
And it couldn't be further from the truth, could it? I mean, I think we're about as hip, if you'll excuse the word, as anywhere you would like to go.
Well, you're not the first to express that. I know of one instance several years ago. Merle Haggard was to do a television show, and I won't embarrass the television show by naming it. But anyway, he walked in, and there were hay bales everywhere, and he said, I'm not going to sing till you get rid of the hay bales. I
did the same thing. We played a political rally for a guy running for governor down in Arkansas. And right before the show started, my road manager came and said, I don't think you're going to like what's up there. I said, well, he said, there's a lot of red, white, and blue banners and a lot of hay bales. I said, well, tell them if they want this hillbilly to sing, they might do away with the hay bales first, and then we'll proceed. I just don't think I respect that part of our past, but that's not where we are
Well,
anymore.
it's stereotyping.
Mm-hmm.
Country singers resent stereotyping.
And I like Waylon's line. He says, by God, we're not perfect, but we're the best thing going. That pretty well sums it up.
I love what Waylon said about George Jones. He said, George Jones is country music.
And he said, talking about winning vocalist of the year, he said, they ought to just give it to George Jones every year because the rest of us are just trying. That's pretty true.
Marty's newest record is called Till I Found You. It's on MCA Records. And I want you to tell me about this song. Why should people run out there and buy one of
Well,
those?
Ralph Everhome ought to have one just because. Paul Kennerly and Hank DeVito wrote this song. I don't know. Every song I've had on the chart so far, it's either had my name and Paul Kennerly or Paul Kennerly on it. We've hit a little streak here. He may be my Harlan Howard for the season. And this song is a pretty song. To be quite truthful, it reminds me, for some reason, when I hear it on the radio, it reminds me of an old Ricky Nelson record. And I never listened to that many Ricky Nelson records, but that's what it comes across. I love the song. It's a lovely song.
What does it say?
When I was a young man, I thought I knew everything. Boy, and that's the line that got me right there. But I didn't know nothing till I found you. I used to get around some. I thought I'd seen everything, but I hadn't seen nothing till I found you. A pretty record, pretty record.
Marty, you are a musician. And you've been a musician for a long time, haven't you?
Yes, sir.
How old were you when you first played in a band?
My first band, I was about 9 years old. There were three guys.
Did you skip childhood?
I think I did. My favorite, people say, where did you grow up? And my favorite answer is in the back end of Lester Flatt's bus. And that's true. My first band was in Philadelphia, Mississippi. We had a Johnny Cash band. Me and two other kids on the street. We played Cub Scout meetings. And there was an Indian reservation in my hometown, the Choctaw Reservation. And we used to go out there and play for the Indians. And if you can work an Indian audience, you can work them up. Because we'd get through playing, those Choctaws would just sit there. They didn't understand the wreck of the old 97.
They didn't applaud.
No. After that, I got a job playing in a gospel bluegrass band when I was 12 years old. We made a little bluegrass festival circuit. And now on that circuit, I met Lester Flatt and the guys in his band. I got a real job then.
At what age did you go to work for Lester Flatt?
I was 13.
You were a Foggy Mountain boy?
No, a Nashville Grass.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Was this after Lester and Earl broke up?
Lester and Earl broke up in 69, and this was 72.
Did you go to school?
Had correspondence course.
Did you finish high school?
Yes, sir.
That kind of tough?
Well, that was real tough.
Well, I'm thinking that a young kid out there on the road working to audiences every night has got to have his head turned. And I would think it would be very hard to concentrate on math and English.
It wasn't something that I enjoyed doing. There was one guy in the band, Roland White, who saw to it that I took care of my studies. You know, those old timers, I'd ask them for answers, and I'd get all kind of funny answers, but I never got the right answers. But I learned a lot that way too. Education was important to me, and I knew that I was getting a lot better education than a book could ever give me on the road, but at the same time, I thought it was wise to go ahead and take care of that too.
You were a sideman for a long time, weren't you?
Yeah. You know, when I first came to town, Ralph, I noticed, and I knew a lot about Nashville before I got here, because I got into country music. I can't ever remember a time in my life that I didn't love it. And when I started with looking at pictures and then TV, and then I started reading up on everybody I could read about. But when I got here, I noticed, you know, I used to go out between shows at the Opry and go down on Lower Broad and look in Demon's Den and Lion Balls and Tootsies and saw what was left of, you know, the old country music world that I loved a lot. And I saw that there were sidemen, and I saw that there were stars and people that would be stars, people that never would be stars, and old has-beens. I saw it all and loved every element of it. But I thought what might be the thing to do is to have a couple of real jobs along the way, learn the ropes, and start in the mailroom, if you will, and make a solid career, a lifelong career out of it. And I think having the opportunity to play with Lester Flatt and then later on with Johnny Cash's band, that's two of the best masters we've ever had in town, I think. And it was a solid start, and I got to know a lot of people from those platforms, and I really enjoyed those people.
How long were you with Lester?
From 72 until 79 when he died.
And then how about with Johnny Cash?
Cash from 80 to 86.
And then after that?
Struggle.
What did Johnny Cash teach you?
Well, with Lester, I got to see, you know, the country, the United States, because he was, you know, certainly a national star, and He and Scruggs had some international audience. And I got to learn the basic rules of how things run around here from, you know, those, his peers' point of view. But with Johnny Cash, I got to see the world. I got to see what it's like to be a country music superstar.
Have you ever seen anybody with as much charisma
Never
as
in
Johnny
my life.
Cash?
Never in my life. Never in my life. When John's right, I've never seen anybody that can walk in and take a room like him.
Boy, when he walks in, he's, what is he, 6'4", something like that.
Well, he seems that tall.
And he's a big man. I think John probably weighs 230, 240. Black suit, dynamic charisma. And his persona just takes over.
Ralph, we were watching a videotape on the bus yesterday of a thing that Opryland put out called Country Hits of the 60s. And it had Patsy, Ernie Ashworth, Porter, Jimmy Dickens, all these guys, all a bunch of old black and white clips. And then Cash came on and sang Ring of Fire. And there was and I recognized this when I was a kid. He was really my hero. And there's something about Johnny Cash that, everybody could do whatever they did and give it their best shot. But when Cash showed up with his 3 chords, it was over. he just went beyond it all, as far as I'm concerned. What a great star.
Marty, we've talked about charisma and imagery in country music. And you have a distinct image. I don't know that everybody recognizes you and puts the name Marty Stuart with your face, but you dress in a rather distinct fashion.
Well, Ralph, I'll put it to you this way, and I think a lot of this is owed to TNN. We're getting pretty hot at the Waffle House.
Well, I assume that this is deliberate. You're trying to establish an image.
Sure. I mean, like I said before, all the people I've ever worked with and ever loved and admired had an image. And they taught that it was an important lick. And I'm from the old thing where, if you go to see a star, they should look like a star, that old bit. And I just love the old hillbilly fashion that, those, my favorite heroes started years ago, and I just like to carry it along.
Is any of your dress, any of your imagery based on anybody else's?
Well, the first suit, the suit on the Hillbilly Rock album cover, for instance, I found an old picture of Gene Autry, and I talked to Manuel. I said, I want a Gene Autry suit. And so when I saw Gene Autry at the CMA Awards, he said hi, and he said, I've been noticing your suit. I said, well, I have to thank you for it, And
Gene Autry recognized the tailoring.
And Roy Rogers, we did a thing with him not too long ago this year. And I used to go to the Country Music Hall of Fame and look at all the suits hanging up in there and on mannequins and get ideas for my clothes. I thought if it was good, that's the standard right there. And I'd go to Manuel, who's the last tailor left that does that, and we'd come up with them.
Do you like rhinestones?
I love rhinestones.
Do you wear them?
Yeah, the old suits used to wear rhinestone pants and coats, but if you do that now, you'd probably get beat up. So I really love wearing rhinestone coats and jeans and just making a fun thing out of it.
Well, I don't know. Porter hasn't been beaten up lately.
Well, Porter has license to wear anything he wants to. Porter still looks great. He told me, there's 2 guys told me this lately. Roy Rogers said he can still wear suits that he wore in the late 40s. And Porter told me he still wears the same size suit that he wore in the 60s.
I was with Porter last night, and I commented to him about his metabolism. I said, Porter, you look to me like... I said, you don't gain any weight. You must have a high metabolism. Can eat anything you want to, right? He said, yeah. It doesn't gain any weight.
That's great.
And he must have... I don't know. He must have 100 of those.
Hey, let me tell you what happened.
Those rhinestone suits.
Before I ever owned one, I called Porter one day. I said, Porter, my record company wants to do a video. Could I borrow one of your suits? He said, well, sure, come get it. And I went upstairs in his office. He just unlocked this little room. He said, take your pick. And it was like seeing the Lord. It's a rhinestone heaven. It was one of the most beautiful sights ever. I went home and dreamed about it. It was so pretty.
Now, can you wear... Are you and Porter about the same size?
The coat fits. Of course, he's much, much taller than I am, but the coats fit. My theory about those old nudie suits is one size fits all.
So how big is the coat?
I think Porter is about a 42, something like that.
Are you a 42?
Mm-hmm.
So did you...
You got one?
I don't... one night...
Did you ever own one?
No, I didn't. One night I borrowed one of Porter's. He came out to the show, and I said, let me wear your coat on the opening. Boy, I looked great.
Hey, I'll loan you one. You can have anything I got, Ralph.
It's one of the nicest things I can remember was Jones used to have a lot of rhinestone suits, and he gave them all away. Who'd he give them to?
He gave them to Johnny Rodriguez.
That's it.
And I'll tell you what I had. I had a pair of gloves. I got into collecting all this old stuff. I had a pair of gloves that belonged to Hank Williams that Nudie made with HW and rhinestones on them. And Ralph, every time I'd put those gloves on, if I went to start the car, it'd be dead. If I picked up my guitar case, the handle would fall off. I mean, I couldn't do anything right if I had these gloves on. I ran into Rodriguez one night, and he told me about Jones giving him all the stuff. I said, you know what I got? I got a pair of gloves you need, and I'll swap you one. I'll swap you a coat for some Hank Williams gloves. He said, all right. And so he did. We did swap, and after Rodriguez got the gloves, I saw him, and he said, those gloves, every time I wear them, something goes wrong. I said, that's exactly right. I don't know what it was.
I've never seen a picture of Hank Williams wearing gloves.
I asked somebody about it, and they said that they vaguely remember Nudie just gave them to him, and I don't know.
Were they coordinated to go with some
I don't think
outfit?
so. It was like a winter glove, a leather glove, and just right up here at
Where
the
are
top.
the gloves now?
Rodriguez has them.
You mean every time you wear them, something bad happens?
Well, not anymore because I gave them away.
Well, I mean, with Rodriguez is having the same problem.
He said that the first time he wore it, something strange happened, and they're pretty spooky gloves.
Wow, right out of the Twilight Zone.
And Waylon said that he had a pair of boots that belonged to Hank. Hank Jr. gave him. And he said that he wore them to the studio one night, and he came out of the studio, and a limb had fallen. I mean, like a tree came crashing down on his car. And he said, take them off.
Ooh. I'm talking with Marty Stuart. The subject is Hank Williams Sr. And you have his guitar?
Hank Jr. apparently gave it to Johnny Cash, and it was in Cash's museum for years. I went out there one day, and I asked somebody to let me in the case. I just wanted to play it. And it was one of the greatest guitars I'd ever picked up in my life. It's like meeting your wife. It's like, oh, Lord.
You mean the tone?
The tone. It was just there. I mean, after all those years, it was just still one of the most wonderful guitars I've ever played from a musician's point of view. Not too long after that, I got a guitar that belonged to Merle Travis. And after Travis passed away, John called me one day and he says, Stuart, I want that guitar. I said, you only have one guitar in your world that would get my Travis guitar. He said, what is it? I said, your Hank guitar. He said, oh, no. He said, you can have my car, but you can't have my Hank guitar. Well, I have his Hank guitar, and he has my Merle Travis guitar. And that guitar is truly one of the greatest guitars I've ever played in my life.
What kind of guitar is
It's
it?
a 1939 Martin D45, and it's a wonderful guitar.
You'll have to explain to those of us who don't
Martin
know.
is a very established company that was invented out of Nazareth, or they started in New York, and all their guitars since the early 1900s have come from Nazareth, Pennsylvania. And most hillbilly singers played a Martin guitar, either a Martin or a Gibson guitar, brand guitar. And this was just like the Cadillac of the Martin guitars.
What made it special?
I think their wood, their craftsmanship, and this one had pretty pearl inlaid in it. It was just a very special guitar.
Do you play it
Absolutely.
in your work?
I don't take it on the road much anymore, but I still use it in the studio a lot and on some TV shows. I've played it on Nashville Now.
You have it insured?
Oh, very much so. And if I leave town for an extensive length of time, I take it to the Hall of Fame and they put it in the vault for me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. I would think you would have to be very careful.
Yeah. You know, we played a show up in Delaware a couple of weeks ago with the Drifting Cowboys, Don Helms and Jerry Rivers and those guys. And as I was leaving, Don Helms, the old steel player for the Drifting Cowboys, came up to me and said, I have a couple of Hank's suits. You want to use them for anything? I said, sure, I'd love to. So I went out to his house last week and picked up these coats, these old nudie coats, much like this one. And sure enough, in the pocket it says Hank Williams, December the 28th, 1950 was the date it was created. And, you know, I own a lot of clothes, and some of them that belong to other people, and I hang them on to wear them or either put them in the vault and leave them. But I put this coat on, and I got the strangest feeling. I said, I don't know if I want to wear this or not. It was a spooky feeling, Ralph. It really was. Perhaps, and you know, we'd drive around the world in Ernest Tubbs' bus. I was in the back room of Tubbs' bus with Hank's suit on, playing Lester Flatt's guitar. Don Slitt said, don't you have anything that wasn't pre-owned? I said, no, it all has a story.
Marty, I want to talk about the personal side of Marty Stuart for a moment. Are you married?
No, single.
Have any children?
No.
Have you been married?
One time.
Want to get married?
No. I did a good job of it the first time.
Yeah, but how long were you married?
About 6 years, I think it was.
Were you married into the Cash clan?
Cindy Cash and I were married.
You have a girlfriend?
Well, yeah, I do. And she lives on a farm out in Franklin, and she don't want to be talked about, so I don't talk about her.
Okay. It would embarrass her, in other words.
Yeah, she lays low.
You are from Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Right.
Only child or one of a...
Now, I have a sister, and Jennifer works actually at Manuel, the guy that makes our clothes. He has a boutique here in town, and Jennifer works there. And my folks live in Murfreesboro. Mom's a banker. My dad worked in a factory, still does, work in a factory for years. And we just basically middle-class country folks.
You mentioned to me earlier that there was an Indian reservation in your hometown, Philadelphia, Mississippi.
Right.
Why is that? Why that particular place?
I don't know. I think the history of it all is the Choctaws broke off from, I think, the Indians in Florida. I stand to be corrected on this. And there's always been an Indian race, a triracial community. And the Indian reservation was real primitive. I remember when I was a child. And the government came in, and there was a fellow from Nashville named Bob Ferguson.
Know Bob very well. He used
Bob,
to produce Porter Wagner, Dolly Parton.
That's right. Bob got interested, and I think he did a lot to stir up interest and help for that reservation down there. And it's a thriving reservation these days, and I think it does quite well.
Do you live alone?
I do.
Have a house or
Yeah.
apartment or condominium?
Live out in the country. I got a place, and most of my time these days I'm in the back end of the bus. We're doing about 200 shows this year, so that's keeping me hopping pretty much right now.
What's the name of your band?
Don't have a name yet.
I would think that you would be a tough taskmaster. If I played in your band, I would have to be pretty good because you've been a musician for a long time, and you probably are pretty picky.
I am. I went to see an act out in Nashville about 2 summers ago. The guy was Bob Dylan. And he played an amphitheater out here. Now, he had 3 guys with him. And I went out there expecting to see this huge production, the stage full of people, and Bob Dylan. But it was Bob Dylan and 3 people. And I was putting a band together at that time, and I thought, this is interesting. I like this. It's fresh. This is different. It totally took me by surprise. Guy and his songs and 3 great musicians. And I got to thinking Johnny Cash and the Tennessee Three was one of my favorite bands. I love the Buckaroos, the simplicity of the Buckaroos that Buck Owens had. And I love the simplicity yet greatness that Merle Haggard and the Strangers had. And I thought, why don't we try it that way? First year out, it might make sense business-wise, but if I can find players that good, let's give it a try. And so me and 3 guys go out on the road, and we fill up the stage pretty good, I think.
Marty, thank you.
I enjoyed it, Ralph.